Waiting for my cue. Good morning. Our first speaker of today is a person that is committed to help others come into emerging technology, Web3, blockchain. He is going to talk to us about AI-driven development, the head ecosystem of Dojo coding. It's a person that is committed to build community, and so they have about 1,800 developers in their community, and they work on open source teams for new technology. We're going to welcome to the stage Alfredo Bonilla, head of ecosystem of Dojo coding.
There we go. Thank you very much. Muy buenos días. Muchas gracias a la organización de Eth Chanel por recibirnos y a la ciudad de Panamá también por recibirnos. La hemos pasado súper bien. Muchísimas gracias. Mi nombre es Alfredo y en noviembre de 2022 empecé a utilizar inteligencia artificial generativa. Apenas fue lanzado ChatGPT, de hecho como unos 3 días después. Y la realidad es que una de las primeras cosas que se me ocurrió hacer fue escribir código con eso, ¿verdad? Porque si genera texto, puede generar código. Entonces, ahí empecé a probarlo desde ese momento. Los resultados realmente al inicio para mí eran sorprendentes, pero ni siquiera me imaginaba hasta dónde íbamos a llegar unos meses después. Y aquí es donde empieza un poco esta historia que les quiero contar sobre el desarrollo de software asistido con inteligencia artificial. Recientemente, unas semanas después de que yo empecé a utilizar ChatGPT para hacer código, me topo este tweet de Andrew Karpathy, que él fue parte del equipo fundador de OpenAI, que dice: el nuevo lenguaje de programación de moda es el inglés. A mí me explotó la cabeza porque sí, realmente yo estaba pudiendo traducir mis palabras del lenguaje natural en código, cual es sorprendente. Tiempo después, Andrew escribe este tweet enorme, que no vamos a leer, pero se los voy a resumir, que básicamente dice: encontré una nueva manera de hacer software. Básicamente me dejo llevar por la vibra, por eso el término vibe coding, que vamos a hablar un poco más de eso. Me olvido que el código existe, empiezo a escribir prompts, me dejo llevar y empiezo a arreglar las cosas cuando salen después de un par de iteraciones. Él mismo dice, curiosamente en este tweet, esto es útil para un proyecto desechable del fin de semana, para explorar ideas y listo, ¿verdad? Él es un gran referente de todos los temas de inteligencia artificial y este fue el momento en que se acuñó el término vibe coding en la industria. Algunos días después, personas que no eran desarrolladoras intentaron empezar a escribir código utilizando puros prompts, como es el caso de Leo, que es un tweet muy famoso. Leo empezó diciendo: hice un SaaS completamente escribiendo prompts sin saber programar, yo no soy técnico, ya estoy cobrando por eso y usted deje quejarse y venga a hacer lo mismo, ¿verdad? Unos días después empezó a quejarse porque lo estaban atacando y lo estaban hackeando. De hecho, unos días más tarde publicó otro tweet que no tengo en este slide que dice: ok, voy a dejar de usar inteligencia artificial porque me hackearon, voy a cambiar mi estrategia, ¿verdad? Entonces, ¿qué significa todo esto para nosotros como desarrolladores y para nosotros como empresas de tecnología? La nueva realidad del desarrollo de software. Para darles algunas estadísticas, el 62% de desarrolladores en este momento ya están activamente utilizando herramientas. Se ha llegado a comprobar un incremento en la velocidad de desarrollo en un 55%. Básicamente, 41% de todo el código generado, del código nuevo, digamos desde 2024 hasta la fecha, se ha generado con inteligencia artificial. De hecho, Google reporta un cuarto, o sea, un 25% de su código generado con inteligencia artificial. Y en general, 78% de las organizaciones utilizan inteligencia artificial en algunos de sus departamentos. Entonces, en números, así es como estamos como industria. ¿Qué significa esto para la organización? Para su organización, significa aumentar la velocidad, ¿verdad? Vamos a pasar de entregas de meses a entregas de semanas. Significa también optimización de los recursos, donde podemos con menos recursos lograr más resultados. Y significa también un cambio en la manera que adquirimos talento como organizaciones. Hagamos una comparativa de lo que veníamos haciendo hace algunos meses, algunos años, con lo que estamos tratando de hacer en este momento a nivel de industria. Entonces, para mí eso es un cambio de paradigma de cómo desarrollamos software. Eso significa que vamos a cambiar muchos aspectos del día a día y muchos aspectos también de la metodología que usamos para desarrollar. Entonces, por ejemplo, en vez de enfocarnos tanto en escribir código, literalmente manual, escribir código, nos enfocamos más en resolver problemas de negocio. En vez de estar buscando en Stack Overflow, que yo sé que muchos lo hicimos, y pasar con copy-paste al código, vamos a estar dirigiendo herramientas de inteligencia artificial para que hagan los resultados que nosotros queremos. Vamos a pasar, de nuevo, de meses a semanas, de semanas a días, de un día completo a un par de horas tal vez. Ya no nos vamos a enfocar tanto en conocer el lenguaje de programación por completo y memorizar absolutamente todas las funciones y los métodos, sino que vamos a empezar a pensar más en cómo definimos bien un problema para poder de ahí obtener las instrucciones para dirigir una inteligencia artificial. La seguridad deja de ser algo que revisamos si acaso al final del proceso y lo tenemos en mente en cada una de las iteraciones. Y finalmente, la curva de aprendizaje se suaviza en el sentido de que ya no vamos a pasar un montón de semanas, meses aprendiendo un nuevo lenguaje de programación, sino que nos vamos a adaptar mucho más rápido a nuevas tecnologías, especialmente porque están cambiando constantemente. Entonces, las habilidades del desarrollador van a ir evolucionando, en el sentido de que ya no nos vamos a enfocar tanto en sintaxis, sino en cómo comunicamos requerimientos. No nos vamos a enfocar tanto en detalles de implementación, sino más bien cómo utilizamos las herramientas para debugging, para seguridad, para básicamente traducir una idea de producto a la realidad. Entonces, comparando un poco el día a día de lo que era antes a lo que es hoy, podríamos decir que un desarrollador tradicional utilizaba un par de horas para investigar, para comunicarse con el equipo de desarrollo, para entender requerimientos, 4 horas desarrollando, tomando en cuenta levantarse por un café y distraerse un poco por ahí, y 2 horas debugueando el código que acaba de escribir. En el caso de un desarrollador moderno, podríamos decir que tiene un enfoque más de producto. Por eso yo le llamo Product Engineer. Para mí, la evolución de este rol de desarrollador pasa a ser del lado del producto. O sea, desarrollador de software se empieza a convertir más en un ingeniero de producto. ¿Y esto qué significa en el día a día? Pues 1 hora de definir requerimientos, 2 horas dirigiendo a las distintas herramientas de inteligencia artificial para que generen resultados, 1 hora probando, revisando código, pero ahora tenemos 4 horas para enfocarnos en lo más importante, que es el negocio, que es el producto. Que parte de lo que me encanta de todo este cambio es que nos podemos enfocar más en la parte creativa. Eso es mucho más divertido que estar luchando contra problemas de sintaxis y cosas por el estilo. ¿Y dónde queda el término de vibe coding que causó tantos problemas algunos slides atrás? ¿Verdad? Que aquí yo creo que hay un poco de confusión de la industria con respecto a cómo desarrollar software. Entonces, dice el término de vibe coding que es dejarnos llevar por la vibra, ¿verdad? Como plasmar nuestras ideas en prompts y olvidarnos del código. Para mí, yo personalmente le llamo AI Driven Development a algo que no es necesariamente vibe coding, o sea, no es nada más escribir prompts y olvidarnos del código, sino más bien es apoyarnos y apalancarnos en herramientas para desarrollar software de manera correcta. Entonces, un acercamiento más metódico o más profesional a esto, utilizando asistencia por medio de inteligencia artificial, requiere que tengamos un plan detallado, un plan de producto. Requiere también que tengamos buenas habilidades de prompt engineering, o sea, que podamos escribir buenas instrucciones para los modelos de lenguaje. Y también que tengamos metodologías de desarrollo de software. Si bien es cierto, las iteraciones se van a acelerar, vamos a tener ciclos más rápidos de feedback. Eso no quiere decir que vamos a dejar del todo la revisión del código, la seguridad y la calidad. Entonces, una metodología más profesional requiere que nosotros escribamos el código, sí, con un modelo, pero que también revisemos que lo que está sucediendo sea correcto. Mientras que un enfoque de vibe coding nos sirve más para prototipar rápidamente, también para improvisar un poco ideas, lo cual también es muy valioso. En una parte temprana de un proyecto donde estamos creando ideas, donde estamos validando como el alcance de alguna tecnología o algo así, es súper útil realizar esto para después pasar tal vez a una metodología un poco más estricta y evitarnos problemas en el futuro para que no nos pase lo de Leo. Dice también Sam Altman que el nuevo programar o el nuevo coding skills es utilizar las herramientas de inteligencia artificial. Entonces, ¿cómo está el escenario de herramientas en este momento? Lo vamos a ver a continuación. Tenemos muchísimas herramientas en este momento. Aquí hay una lista de algunas, no son todas, hay más y siguen saliendo. De hecho, es interesante porque yo esta charla tengo que actualizarla casi que cada semana, precisamente porque siempre hay un cambio en las herramientas. Pero en general, estas son las más populares y la diferencia que tienen es que algunas ofrecen un poco de más o menos control sobre el código que estamos escribiendo en el momento que lo escribimos. Algunas son un poco más autónomas, algunas tienen más fortaleza en el diseño, algunas tienen más fortaleza en la manera que podemos hacer diferencias de código. Algunas son una plataforma o un agente, las otras son realmente un editor asistido, entonces tienen sus diferencias. Quisiera hacer una mención especial a Firebase Studio. Firebase Studio es bastante nuevo, pero a mí me gusta porque está muy conectado con el ecosistema de Google. Utiliza Gemini 2.5 de inmediato, lo cual es genial. Es el modelo más potente en este momento para código. Tiene una ventana de contexto de 1 millón de tokens. Eso significa que podemos meter ahí cantidades enormes de código, todos nuestros proyectos en la ventana de contexto del modelo. Y esto nos permite pues, que el contexto sea más sólido. 1 millón de tokens significa alrededor de 2 o 3 veces la trilogía del Señor de los Anillos en una sola ventana de contexto. Esa es la cantidad de texto que podemos incluir. Entonces, un proyecto muy grande de código puede utilizar este modelo de manera sin ningún problema. A mí personalmente me gusta más Cursor. Cursor es un editor que tiene un agente de inteligencia artificial integrado. Me gusta mucho porque se parece mucho a VS Code, que es un editor que yo solía utilizar, y tiene bastantes herramientas. Básicamente se integra completamente con el contexto del proyecto. Puedo elegir diferentes modelos conforme van saliendo. Entonces, como cada semana hay un modelo nuevo, yo puedo probarlo de inmediato. Puedo trabajar con múltiples archivos, puedo crear archivos, editar archivos y la interfaz es bastante conversacional. O sea, una vez que yo tengo todo mi set de instrucciones y tengo además todos los archivos del proyecto, yo puedo conversar con el proyecto y empezar a hacer cambios. Así es como se ve. Para las personas que no son técnicas y van a ver muchas cosas, pero en realidad lo importante de esto es que tenemos una interfaz de chat que está visible de este lado izquierdo, donde podemos ver los cambios que va haciendo el editor en verde o las cosas que fueron borradas en rojo. Y podemos conversar, podemos dar instrucciones, podemos hacer llamado de herramientas, podemos conectarnos incluso a otras partes del proyecto. Podemos también traer al contexto otros archivos de código o otros archivos de instrucciones para básicamente mejorar el resultado de lo que estamos escribiendo. Yo personalmente utilizo instrucciones muy estructuradas, utilizo en realidad varios archivos de instrucciones. Esto no es solamente para Cursor. Cursor en realidad tiene bastantes herramientas para crear nuestras propias reglas. Sin embargo, un set de instrucciones adecuadas, hechas con mentalidad de prompt engineering, o sea, pensando en cómo podemos quitar la ambigüedad para que el modelo dé mejores resultados, se ve un poco así. Estas son las que yo utilizo, ¿verdad? Que es un documento que tiene todo el resumen del producto que estoy construyendo, la estructura de los archivos para que el modelo entienda dónde está cada cosa, instrucciones de implementación, que es como una lista de tareas, que es como la lista de tareas que tendríamos para un equipo de desarrollo, donde yo puedo ir paso a paso. Tengo también una definición técnica de mi stack de tecnologías. Y además tengo un archivo que va recuperando los cambios. Estas herramientas ya tienen historiales de cambios, tienen muchísimas otras herramientas para manejar el contexto, pero a mí me encanta utilizar archivos de texto para manejar esto porque primero puedo llevarme estos archivos para otro agente y segundo me da un mejor control, me da más claridad a la hora de trabajar. Quiero finalizar con 7 prácticas de cómo podemos integrar todas estas herramientas y toda esta nueva tendencia a equipos de desarrollo que ya están estructurados. Porque cuando creamos un producto desde cero, es mucho más sencillo empezar con herramientas, pero cuando vamos a integrarnos a proyectos que ya están hechos o equipos que ya están establecidos, necesitamos algunas guías para esto. Entonces, lo primero que vamos a hacer en un equipo es identificar cuáles son los gaps de habilidades. O sea, ¿qué necesita mi equipo para integrar estas herramientas efectivamente? Muy probablemente una inducción a Prompt Engineering, probablemente nuevas metodologías para probar el código. Entonces, todo esto tenemos que definirlo para poder hacer un entrenamiento adecuado y preparar a nuestro equipo de desarrollo de manera efectiva. Ahora, la mejor manera de hacer esto es con un proyecto piloto. O sea, no vamos a nada más llegar y darle herramientas de inteligencia artificial a todo el mundo para que empiecen a trabajar en todos los proyectos, sino que vamos a elegir un único proyecto que no sea de alto impacto, pero que nos permita medir el comportamiento y los resultados. También en la parte de contratación, vamos a tener que estructurar un poco diferente los procesos de contratación. Tenemos que enfocarnos más en resolución de problemas, en pensamiento de sistemas, en habilidades de aprendizaje rápido. A la hora de entrevistar tenemos que también revisar muy bien las habilidades que tienen y la experiencia que tienen las personas utilizando herramientas de inteligencia artificial. Y cuando vamos a armar un equipo o vamos a integrar personas nuevas al equipo, quisiéramos tener una mezcla de especialistas que conozcan muy bien las tecnologías, pero también generalistas que sean muy buenos utilizando las herramientas. Queremos revisar el código definitivamente y para esto necesitamos procesos de revisión de código. Entonces, algo que podemos hacer es automatizar una parte del proceso de revisión para tener incluso insights más avanzados de qué podemos mejorar en nuestro código. Ya hay herramientas que nos permiten revisar los pull requests en un proyecto, nuevo código que se va a integrar. Pero también tenemos que mezclarlo, obviamente, con revisiones de parte de humanos. Entonces, tenemos que definir exactamente cuáles son las partes cruciales de nuestro proyecto, arquitectura, lógica de negocio, seguridad, sobre todo porque muchas veces el código funciona a nivel técnico, pero no necesariamente es lo que nosotros queremos reflejar para el negocio. Y con estas dos partes hacer una revisión diferencial, es decir, poner un poco más de cuidado en las partes que realmente lo requieren y delegarle un poco más a la inteligencia artificial a otras partes. Tenemos que también medir el éxito de esto, o sea, métricas, qué tanto tiempo estamos ahorrando, qué tantos nuevos bugs estamos introduciendo o qué tan buena es la calidad ahora. Y también cuánto estamos durando para poder llegar a producción con los nuevos resultados. Si no medimos esto, realmente no vamos a saber si la estrategia nos está funcionando. Por eso es súper importante establecer las métricas antes de empezar. En temas de seguridad, es importante tener en cuenta que no hayan problemas o bugs de seguridad en nuestro código. Entonces podemos tener herramientas y también asistencia humana a la hora de revisar. Es muy importante integrarnos con la gobernanza, es decir, qué partes podemos utilizar de inteligencia artificial, tomando en cuenta la privacidad, tomando en cuenta las políticas de los clientes, tomando en cuenta políticas de la empresa en sí. Y cómo hacemos para que nuestro proceso de desarrollo realmente cumpla con estas consideraciones. Una buena idea para lograr obtener un poco de lo bueno de los dos mundos, ¿verdad? Soluciones en cloud, todos estos modelos superpotentes de estas grandes compañías versus la privacidad que necesitamos para nuestros clientes o nuestra empresa es tener una estrategia híbrida. O sea, podemos tener parte de lo que una herramienta on-premise para analizar ciertas partes del proyecto o para datos sensitivos o para consultar información privada de la empresa, pero también podemos tener servicios en cloud para partes menos sensitivas del código, de los proyectos, etcétera, y así poder aprovechar un poco de todo. Finalmente, es importante establecer un framework de gobernanza. Eso es básicamente definir políticas, lo cual significa, a fin de cuentas, establecer los marcos para las personas. O sea, qué pueden hacer las personas, qué realmente es privado y qué no, en qué momento pueden utilizar las herramientas, en qué momento no. En la medida que seamos claros con esto, vamos a darle más tranquilidad a nuestros equipos de desarrollo y vamos a establecer realmente las guías de cómo el equipo de desarrollo puede utilizar las herramientas y dónde tiene que utilizar una estrategia diferente. Sobre todo por riesgos de seguridad, de privacidad y pues amenazas, incluso que en este momento no conocemos, que puedan presentarse debido a la inteligencia artificial. En general, para buscar la verdadera estabilidad, tenemos que abrazar el cambio. Entonces yo les invito a tomar esto con mucha curiosidad, seguir investigando, seguir haciendo pruebas, medir los resultados y realmente entender que es un cambio de paradigma y hoy probablemente es el peor día en el desarrollo de software porque a partir de hoy todo va a seguir mejorando hacia el futuro. Y con esto pues llegamos a las preguntas. Gracias.
A ver, ¿tenemos alguna pregunta? ¿Sí?
Sí, buenas. Bueno, aquí, mire, por ejemplo, ahora mismo estoy usando el VS Code con Cloud.
Muy bien.
Y para que vea que lo que está hablando aquí no es algo inventado. La pregunta sería más bien, ¿cuál es el modelo que más le está gustando? ¿Cuáles son las diferencias entre los modelos que le está gustando más ahora mismo? ¿Cómo es el modelo no el modelo LLM, sino el modelo de uso? Porque estas herramientas aún son muy nuevas y no tienen como la ergonomía completa de cómo puede funcionar a nivel de usuario. Así que, ¿qué sistema, qué UX es el que más le está gustando ahora mismo?
Ok, sí, esa es una muy buena pregunta. Depende. Yo combino algunas herramientas. Entonces, por ejemplo, para iniciar un proyecto y hacer un poco de lluvia de ideas conmigo mismo o con un equipo, tiendo a utilizar V0 o Lovable por la manera en que expresan el UI UX, ¿verdad? Ya para un proyecto que está avanzado o que es más complejo, utilizo Cursor con el agente y utilizo mucho también en este momento Gemini 2.5, es bastante potente, sobre todo con el razonamiento, porque me da resultados más precisos en menos cantidad de prompts. Es un poco lento en comparación con otros modelos, pero yo prefiero esperar unos segundos más y que el resultado sea realmente preciso. No sé si con esto respondo la pregunta. Uso Lovable y uso V0 de Vercel. Lovable.dev es bastante bueno.
¿Qué tal, Alfredo? Bueno, estas herramientas de AI en el mundo del software han cambiado drásticamente en los últimos meses. ¿Qué significa esto para personas que están entrando apenas al mundo de desarrollo de software, que quieren convertirse en ingenieros, en devs? ¿Cuál es el impacto?
Bueno, el principal impacto yo creo que es el cambio de cómo se debe aprender realmente. Y con esto me refiero a que ya no solo es necesario aprender de la manera tradicional, ir aprendiendo durante 6 meses a hacer código, sino que hay que ir entrenando la mente a utilizar las herramientas. Eso no significa que la persona tiene que dejar por completo las bases de programación e ingeniería, siguen siendo muy importantes, pero realmente yo siento que una persona que viene entrando no debería esperar a tener un año de conocimiento para empezar a usar las herramientas, porque realmente usar las herramientas realmente se va a convertir eventualmente en la habilidad más importante.
¿Dónde ve todo eso en unos 2 años?
2 años es mucho, pero honestamente veo la calidad de los resultados de los agentes creciendo exponencialmente. Entonces, ¿eso qué significa? Que va a haber más software, pero va a haber software diferente, software más potente. O sea, vamos a ver una explosión de creatividad y de software increíble y tecnologías que en este momento probablemente no nos imaginamos. Y para mí 2 años realmente no es tan poquito. En 2 años van a ocurrir muchísimas cosas.
Gracias.
Como coach, ¿cómo te encontramos? O como mentor, ¿dónde podemos encontrarte?
Sí, pueden ingresar a dojocoding.io. Esa es la página del dojo. Y mis redes personales, @brolac, cualquiera redes, LinkedIn, X, Instagram, me pueden encontrar.
Excelente. Un fuerte aplauso para Alfredo.
Gracias.
¿Cómo estamos? Estamos llegando. Nuestro próximo speaker, or next speaker, they come to talk to us about, I guess, legal terms in emerging technologies. We're going to be accompanied now by Rebecca Munoz. She's a lawyer at Panama Pacifica Legal, and Dr. Edgar Young, with 10 years of experience. He's a partner at Pacifica Legal. He holds a PhD, or hope I'm saying this right, Rodin University of Moscow. Yep. He's a lawyer. Both of them are lawyers, but are disruptors as well. They are champions for new technology, for Web3, and they're going to talk to us about, I guess, corporate structure for these new companies in these new emerging technologies. So welcome to the stage, Dr. Edgar Young and Rebecca Munoz. This way. Big round of applause. Come on, guys. Let us feel the energy in the room. Is it clicker?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Edgar. I'm here with my partner, Teresa. We're both from Pacifica Legal, a Panamanian-based law firm. If you can talk a bit about us and what we do.
Yeah, well, we are a Panamanian law firm. We have been together since 2022, and basically we work with founders around the world, incorporating corporations, private interest foundations, and all that is required for, basically just formalizing your business, taking advantage of Panamanian, structures.
Yeah, so we have been pretty active in the crypto space in Panama. Up to date, we have incorporated around 250 entities between foundations and companies, a very mixed sort of clients, so anything from L1, L2s, top 5 centralized exchanges, top 5 decentralized exchanges, borrow and lending protocols, perpetual trading platforms, and so on. So we have a very diverse set of clients and expertise in this topic. So I wanted to start this talk with a tweet that I like from Camilla McFarland, which stated that it's still crazy that founders in crypto not only have to be visionaries, but they also have to deal with setting up capital markets experts, doing the structure for the token generation event, dealing with market makers, and navigating the exchange listing. So imagine a pre-product market fit seed stage founder that they have to do their own IPO without any help, so no Goldman Sachs, no one to help in the first 6 months. So this is what we're dealing with in crypto. So if you want to talk a bit about the stages of launching a token, so it is really a complex structure, and founders really need to do a lot of things. So there are a lot of moving pieces when you are doing a token launch or a TGE, the token generation event. So the first stage is, of course, you have to engage a counsel. So recommended to engage someone that have done that, seen that, and have experience in that topic, whether it's legal or if it's like doing your tokenomics, your token structuring. Then you want to set up a corporate structure. These are typically done offshore. Very popular are Cayman, BVI, and Panama. Of course, you can also explore some other jurisdictions like Duna in the US, or you can also do a regulated token launch from UAE. But let's say the gold standard is still to go offshore, where Panama takes an important role. Then you want to have your token structuring. So then you are talking about valuation, choosing your token allocation and distribution, exchanges, liquidity, wallets, and so on. Then it's the token generation event. Here you are thinking about minting of tokens, distributions to investors, liquidity providers, and so on. And then after the fact, after the token is launched, you want to have a talk about governance and token management. So you have platforms like Toku, where you have these possibilities of managing your token. So there is a lot of intersections between legal and crypto. So anything from corporate structuring, setting up the fundraising terms of use, privacy policy, and so on. A lot of regulatory questions. So you want to issue these tokens in a legal way. A lot of founders, they don't simply say, hey, I don't want to go to jail. So it's a good framework to think of. And Panama allows you to do that. So you can perfectly issue, trade, airdrop a token without the necessity of being regulated.
Maybe just to add some examples on this part, we know that when you're starting, a project, you're excited, you want to raise funds, so on. But then you have the other part after that. For example, the terms and conditions, the privacy policy, the jurisdiction that will rule the situation that are happening if something goes wrong. These are key details that need to be viewed, and preferably with a legal team, in order for you to have something established, something, based there, and just be able to be aware of what to do when things go wrong.
Right. So here we are only going to talk about the first two. So how to structure a corporate structure, and really I want to portray on the why to structure it, why to have a corporate structure in place, and then how to fundraise for these type of Web3 projects. So let's talk first about the first part of fundraising. So also to give you a bit of context, the evolution of fundraising in crypto has changed throughout the years. We have seen in 2017 a lot of ICOs where this is pretty much open to everyone to participate in the token. Then it has evolved through time. You have now seen more SAF and SAFE plus equity arrangements. So normally before you used to have founders creating a token and then delivering one product based on that token. The problem with that was that a lot of the time that project wouldn't deliver, and then the token would go to zero. So founders now have getting smarter and change things a bit. So that now they are creating a project first, then validating that project through the community, and then issuing a token. When you are issuing a token, then that typically entails some type of fundraising that can be either from angel, pre-seed, Series Seed, or your Series A for larger projects. Okay, so how do we structure these things? Typically, you will find different options. So it can be a public sale or ICO. It can be through a simple agreement of future tokens, or it can be some type of equity plus tokens. It's normally through a SAFE plus a token warrant or a side letter. Okay, so if you're talking about an ICO, this is pretty much open to everyone to participate in. You typically have a set price or a tiered price where you incentivize earlier investors into the project. But pretty much it's open to everyone. Everyone has the same conditions. The problem with that was that it got a lot of scrutiny from regulators around 2017 and 2018. So then they started to change more to SAF and SAFE plus token warrants. If you're talking about SAF, okay, what is a SAF? a SAF is a legal agreement where your company is agreeing to deliver tokens in the future for funds now. So you're receiving funds from investors, and you're saying to that investor, "I'm going to deliver token to you in XYZ, 6 months, for example." Then you're yeah. So as I was saying, the problem with a lot of the ICOs was that they got a lot of scrutiny from regulators, specifically in the US. So you have a lot of the ICOs to be considered a regulated activity. As stated by this, most ICOs are considered to be offerings of securities. And you have a lot of cases pursued by the SEC against these type of projects. So if you're talking about SAFE, these are pretty standard agreements. So you are either talking about the Y Combinator SAFE, either a Series C SAFE, or the NVCA SAFE. So these are pretty well established agreements. And then you can have either a token warrant or a side letter, which there are very minimum differences between the two of them. I think that we can skip that because it's quite specific. But generally speaking, the token warrant it's more formal and procedural, while the side letter it's more flexible and less formal. Okay, so when to do one or the other one? So when to do a SAFT and when to do a token warrant? So if you have already a specific tokenomics, token allocation, token valuation, then you can go straight through a SAFT. If on the opposite side you are not clear or you want to keep flexible things in terms of your tokenomics, token valuation, and price of the token, then you can go ahead and have SAFE plus a token warrant. Okay, so how to structure this type of corporate structure for Web3 projects. So you would typically have three set of groups. We like to divide them into a development entity, a token issuer group, and then a platform or front end.
Yes, so basically in Panama, what we can offer is Anonima and LLC, known in other jurisdictions. And yeah, Panama, what we have is the benefits of tax neutrality. We don't have crypto regulation or BAS regulation, so it's interested for founders all over the world. We can also use private interest foundation also for protecting the assets, if that is the case. And well, basically also the platform, the front end, everything related with the different agreements, terms and conditions, privacy policy, and so on.
Okay, so you typically have, let's say that you want to issue a token, right? So how do you structure this? You typically have one development entity. It is a standalone entity, meaning that it doesn't have a connection by way of ownership to the offshore group. And then you would typically do the development of that platform or of that token through the development entity. So it's a very low risk, and we typically recommend to have that in a tax-neutral jurisdiction or a jurisdiction closer to the founders. Then you have a foundation. The foundation is AKA ownerless, meaning that it doesn't have direct shareholders or owners. So it also benefits for this type of Web3 projects that are pursuing decentralization. So it is a standalone entity and has its legal personality, meaning that it can sue and be sued, which is a very good benefit. It also functions as an asset and liability protection. So between you, the founder, and a high-risk activity, as it is a token launch or a crypto platform, you want to create a buffer between you and these type of high-risk activities. It also creates asset protection, so that the assets of that foundation cannot be seized by way of law. And the entity itself, it's also a dedicated entity to the purpose of that foundation. In this case, all the tokens and the proceed of the sales of those tokens will be dedicated to the object of that foundation. That can be, for example, pursuing the development of a certain blockchain activity or project. The foundation is also typically the one that holds the treasury, that interacts with the DAO, if there's any. And that's kind of the role. It's kind of the entity that is steering the wheels of that token generation event. Then you have a token seller. Typically, it can be from BBI or Panama, which is the entity that it's doing the signing of the SAF or different investment agreements. Okay, so other considerations to be made. Do you want to take this? Okay, so a few things to consider. Where are you offering the tokens or services? It's a very important question. So if you are talking about the US, for example, you want to avoid using SAFT because it would be considered, I mean, things are changing, but most of the time would be considered a regulated activity. If you are talking about Europe, then you need to consider things like reverse solicitation principle. The other thing to consider is what is the nationality and, most importantly, the residence of the founder. This is more important for tax reasons. The other thing is, can the token holders be deemed a general partnership and therefore be considered jointly and severally liable? The answer to that question is yes, and therefore one of the reasons why to have these activities wrapped in a legal entity. So let's say, why do I need a company or a foundation, right? You can have an issuance of token, but then each token holder will be liable for other token holders' activities, right? Then you have a tax consideration. So what is the characterization of the legal entity from outsiders' perspective? It can be also question about nominee directors. So what is the management of that entity to still consider tax friendly? There's also the question about front end and protocol separation, geofencing, VPN blocking. We typically recommend not to offer these services locally, also for tax benefits. Yeah, so this is also related to the question of general partnerships. We have seen some cases in summons against Lido, I think last year, right? Where the unincorporated entity was considered to be a general partnership, and therefore you have several liability between token holders. There were previous cases also in this line with the Uki DAO and the Sarkuni case, also along this line. Yeah, so okay, the big question, why consider Panama in this scenario?
Yeah, so currently in Panama, there is no asset regulation or crypto regulation, so it's open to incorporate different kinds of entities. Also, there is no license required. One of the most frequent questions we get from clients worldwide is, what is the license they need to obtain in order to be able to formalize the series? As of now, there is no need of license for crypto or for token issues. Then the setup and the maintenance is pretty affordable compared to other jurisdictions such as Cayman, such as Singapore, such as Delaware. So that's one of the other benefits. The constitution of entities in Panama is interesting. There is also risk mitigation, because once you have the idea, the project in one entity, one private interest foundation or corporation, then the risk goes to the entity and not to you as a person, as a natural person. In Panama, there is also no, the entities do not need to have public the ultimate beneficial owner's information, Nonetheless, in Panama, we have a superintendency that requires this information to be updated in a private platform. It's not published, it's not available to. In Panama, we also offer foundations, which is pretty interesting, and many people do not know about it. And foundations can work as DAO wrappers. It can also work for treasury, for token governance, among others. And it's really interesting because some clients come thinking maybe on a trust, and then they found out that they can use private interest foundations in Panama, and it's way more affordable, and it's also easier to incorporate. Then, as we know, in Panama, we have the territoriality principle in taxes. So taxes that are not, activities, that are not implemented in Panama are not required to pay taxes. So it's interesting because that will be no corporate income tax on foreign source incomes. And then also, one of the benefits of Panama is the non-economic substance regime, which is required in other jurisdictions such as Cayman and other Caribbean options.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. Um, so mostly on the last slide, I understand that Panama is like a pretty good place to do business, mostly if you're in this industry, because Panama becomes kind of a hub where things doesn't happen in here, but you can like formulate everything and regulate, at least structure the entity here. Doesn't matter if it works in a different country, right? So my question is this becoming a boom in legal entities? Is there many legal entities doing the same? There is a lot of firms doing the same that you do, or this is something new that only you and a few players are playing right now?
So yeah, basically we have seen that in Panama more law firms, traditional law firms are doing this. Maybe the difference of them with us is that this is our main activity. We work for crypto projects, providing law services, Panama legal services. So yeah, it's something that is indeed blooming. It's interesting because we have, I don't know, maybe 3 years, and we have developed more than 250 entities focused directly on crypto activity, including corporations and private interest.
Yeah, if I could add to that, in my opinion, I think Panama got popularity after SushiSwap incorporation in Panama. I think it was in 2021 or 22. Yeah, 2023. So I think after 2022, 23, Panama increasingly became more popular. I would say in the offshore scenario, it is in the top 3 jurisdictions that you want to look into it. I think each jurisdiction has its own benefits and cons. For example, if you want to issue a token in Cayman, that would be a regulated activity. So you would need approval from SEMA, from Cayman, to be able to issue that token. That's why they do normally a foundation with a subsidiary corp in BBI, because even though there's a vast regulation in BBI, you can still issue that token without being regulated. In Panama, you have kind of the benefit of both. So you do have foundations that you will find in Cayman, and you can also issue a token without the need to be licensed or subject to registration, regulated activities. Yeah, so it's quite popular to set up this type of structure and using Panama either to the whole or part of the business. Another example is, for example, deploying a protocol in Cayman and BBI might also be considered a regulated activity, especially consider what is the purpose of that of that protocol. So you can have, for example, one foundation in Cayman, token issuer in BBI, and then the protocol deployer in Panama, for example. Yeah.
I'm gonna cut on you, man. Right? Shit. Yeah. I have one question just came up right now when you were talking, so I'll do it first and then the other one. So, what about the Superintendencia de No Regulados? Is these guys getting into any of this, or is it like the Wild West still?
Yeah, so for the activities of crypto, it is still a non-regulated activity, meaning, so in general, there's no vast regulation, there's no crypto regulation in Panama. You can issue, trade, token, or be engaged in crypto-related activities like an exchange,
Commercialize.
right? Yes. Yeah, right.
Commercialize.
Commercialize and so on.
Openly advertise.
So if, let's say, you are an exchange, you are not subject to AML regulation. We have even issued a request to the Financial Intelligence Unit saying, hey, we have an exchange here. They want to have some type of voluntary submission of STRs, of suspicious transaction report. How do they deal with this? Or for how long do...
We don't have the people for that, sorry.
Yeah, so for how long can we keep the funds frozen, right? And their answer from them was, hey, this is not yet in place in law. You are not a reporting entity, so you not only have the obligation, but you cannot even actually do voluntary reports. So that is on the crypto side. So you don't have to be subject to AML regulations. You don't have a supervisory, like a superintendencia. However, for law firms that are creating those entities, we law firms are regulated reporting activities, right? So when we create that corporation or foundation, we need to have certain data and documents from your side, right? So basic KYC info, it is your passport, second ID, utility bill as proof of address, and some considerations. So yeah, when you are creating that entity, you do need to have some KYC in place, but those projects that are running the exchange or your token sale do not have to comply with AML regulations. However, money laundering is still illegal, so we do recommend having some type of KYC AML measures in place for your principle of, cover your ass principle, but not because it's mandatory by law.
Say CYA. Now you can coin that. CYA.
CYA, yeah.
So yeah, my other question really quickly that you just talked about it, but you said that I have my tax thing would be my residency, and because there's a lot of people living in Panama right now, but the company is in British, whatever, because of some reason that I don't know what the reason is exactly, but that would be to have their own personal taxes, because they don't have to pay taxes because the income is coming from another country. But why do they put the company why don't they do the company here? And if they're living here, because you're saying that both things would be taken into account. I had understood that the only thing that mattered was where the company was.
Yeah, so there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to taxation. But essentially in Panama, it is territoriality based. Meaning if you're offering tokens or services outside of Panama, that is non-taxable income. If you're offering these services within the territory of Panama, then it would be taxable as any other local. It doesn't matter. If you're selling it abroad,
it's where the buyer is, not the seller.
Yeah, Yeah, it's where you're offering that services. So if they are, let's say, Panamanian residents, whether individual or companies, then that would be more categorized as local. Even though, like, to be honest, in the Ministry of Economy, there's not a lot of guidelines as to how to tax crypto if you're selling to a local company. Therefore, we're not paying at least capital gains on the sale of those tokens. If you're distributing then capital through dividends, then there's another picture to that. Where is that a shareholder going, and if there is a double taxation treaty between them? Yeah, but also it depends also where the founder is located, right? So let's say that you are in Portugal and you are creating a company here in Panama. Then you can have like a services agreement between these two can be considered a related entity, right? If you have U.S. founders also, then you do not only need to look into your tax resident, but just being a U.S. person, you have to be, you have to comply with global taxation. So there's a lot of moving pieces when it comes to taxation, but yeah.
That was great. That was the best summary I've ever heard of the structuring process. And as a comment, I feel like I have a Cayman Foundation. The governance there is great, but this weird dependence they have on BVI and not having any economic substance in the Cayman, it's a lot of rules. And it sounds like unifying that in Panama is a good idea. What are my governance options for a foundation, the foundation structure in Panama? Like, as a practical matter, how is it governed?
I think it really depends on how do you want to structure it, right? If that governance through a DAO or not, if that foundation really wrapping that DAO or receiving instructions from the DAO, which is an unincorporated entity. What are the rights of the token holders, right? I think. Teresa.
Well, we actually wrote an agreement with Otico. You might know those guys that applies the voting DAO governance to the foundation directors. Is that an option?
It's like it would depend, because like you would also, there's like a late tendency that you don't actually want to have the token holders as part of the foundation, or you don't want to give them rights directly in the foundation, because like that would be an issue. So you would rather have like just like committees like grab in other entities, but keep the management of the foundation separate. For example, in Cayman, you have like the supervisor, and that would be like considered the UBO for the company. You would rather have that instead of having the token holders or the members of the DAO just like be held as potential liable parties in case something goes wrong. That's like the latest trend on that aspect. Like before, you would like have like the beneficiaries or like the token holders as beneficiaries. Like you're not seeing that much lately after like UkiDAO and other like cases.
Good point. Although, as you've probably seen, when these foundations become successful, they become a negative force because the people that manage the foundation just sit on the money and stop doing anything.
Like that's like what he was like mentioning actually. Like they were mentioning that you will like divide the parts of the DAO. Like there's this concept called like DAO adjacent entities or borgs. And what they do is like you separate the treasury management, you'll separate the token issuance, you'll separate the operations, you'll separate the front end, and you have like different entities that control different situations. So like you'll like mitigate those risks, and that one a certain person who actually manages the whole project will kind of like get into it. So like it would depend, like it will be like a case by case scenario. But yeah, like I understand your point that there's always like a core team that will like have that management or ultimate like management of like the multisig or something. But that can be mitigated like with this like structures, like on-chain and off-chain. You want to like replicate what you have like on-chain into these entities. And the bylaws are similar.
Yeah, I think like a practical example would be MakerDAO, where there was the purpose of decentralization through that foundation.
Yeah, but MakerDAO is a great example of really screwed up governance.
Yes. Yeah, so their plan was, let's create a foundation, let's try to decentralize as much as possible. Once we are sufficiently decentralized, then we will dissolve that foundation, which they did, I think, in 2021. And then they decided to wrap that again because of the general partnership question. So
Yeah, you can see why this is an interesting issue.
yes, it is.
Because direct DAO control prevents the problem that's happened with successful blockchains where the directors just sit on the money and pay themselves big salaries. You have these issues that you get with MakerDAO where the founder takes control and does crazy stuff and destroys value. But you also need founder guidance, as she was saying, to really do anything new. So it's an interesting question. It sounds like you guys are ready to get into it.
Yeah, I think it has benefits for both. If you have more a centralized approach through that foundation, I think that the decision making, at least at the very beginning, it's more beneficial. So you want to keep it flexible in terms of the purpose, in terms of management, because it also can slow things down if you are doing a DAO right the way and, let's say, giving away all decision making. It can also become a mess.
Because like there's always like a protocol that is actually like generating the fees or like having this part of like the big assets in the treasury, and that's normally like part of like the assets the VC that raised for like the staff for like the part of the equity of the company, and the core team founders mostly keep. And then there are like the parts that you actually want to delegate a DAO, for example, for the grants distribution of builders. So like you like only delegate certain aspects of that management to the DAO side or to the governance side. Like I do think like there's like a new trend in the ones you're keeping like that very separate. Maybe you have a foundation for the DAO itself, but like you also have an OPSCO and you also have another front end entity for the fees and for the actual management of the protocol. So like I do completely see those as like two different aspects.
And then also the other question is, okay, what is the alternative, right? So let's say if you're not doing any entity, you're an unincorporated association, any token holder will be responsible and liable for the actions of other token holders. So this is not good. Then if you are doing it only through a company, then the question is, do you have a fiduciary duty to your shareholders? So how do you manage that fiduciary duty to the shareholders versus the token holders, right? So this is a big question that it is not a perfect solution, but I think that having a foundation in place would benefit for this type of things.
And there's also like a trend I've seen. We work a lot with like lawyers from other jurisdictions, and like before, like those lawyers that were like, oh no, like I'll just like drop out everything of the DAO that will be like considered high risk and just keep like the DAO unwrapped. After like recent cases like the Lido one, they're like, no, like we actually, because like when they responded Lido, like actually created an entity that will grab the DAO. So like they responded through a different entity they created for that purposes. And for that and other purposes, they're like, no, like we actually need an entity for this purpose in particular. So like that's a new trend we've seen a lot.
Yeah, even for example, with a token holder, let's say that you hold the token, you didn't do any decision, you didn't delegate any vote. The SEC take on that was that you made a decision, but by not voting. So even like
by default.
Yeah.
Like by default, you made a decision.
You still have the effective control of the token. So like when you delegate it or not, it's sort of like, that was like what I was talking the other day about like the risks on delegation. Like there are risks in both parts. But if you're holding a token and then maybe in the bylaws it says like, oh, if all token holders are like part of this community or something like that, you could like be held liable at a certain point. That's why you want to like segregate all the governance part from the actual protocol. That's like my criteria.
Yeah. Yeah, and also a lot of these cases were in the past administration, right? 2017, 18 until last year, where the SEC was very against crypto. So I think this week there's a new SEC chairman, I think Paul Atkins. So with the new administration, who knows? Maybe there's not a need to be that cautious about it. I think that at the SEC the things are divided, but it also it's very yeah. Yeah.
Great. Let's give a big round of applause to Edgar and Rebecca. Thank you, guys. I think this more than a presentation, it also deserves a panel conversation that we can expand a little bit. So thank you again. Some swag, you can at the back of the room. There's some coffee, very tasty coffee, and some other souvenirs. We're gonna take a little break now, and we'll be back here in about 15 minutes. So don't go too far, grab your coffee. See you soon.